What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back here for another video for you guys, and a really special video today as we have got a Tottenham legend with us today, an absolute Tottenham legend. Not just a Tottenham legend, but a Tottenham fan, manager from 2004 to 2008. It is obviously the great Martin. Yo, Martin, how are you today? And welcome to the channel.
Good evening, guys. It's a pleasure to be with you. You know, it's probably the first time that I've did it, and especially for Spurs fans. You know, so it's a real pleasure for me.
It really is. I mean, we've got a lot of fond memories of your time at Spurs, and I just wanted to start right at the beginning. Obviously, you came with Jack Santini in 2004 as assistant manager, but just after 13 games, you became the full-time manager of Tottenham. What did that mean to you, and did you ever think that that could come about so quickly?
To be honest, guys, I came to Spurs because Frank Arnezen told me that I would be the head coach, and he was a sort of sporting director manager. So I really thought that I was doing the sessions and the meetings and, you know, all the other stuff you do in Europe, because in Europe you get a different constellation, you know, with a technical director and a coach. And they call it a trainer coach here. In England, it's probably more of a manager who's taking his assistant coach with him. So I was the head coach, and then I came there, you know, and Chris Hughton, of course, was there, and Clive Allen. And then after a couple of days, you know, I decided to go there. I was there with my manager, agent Mino Raiola, who's probably one of the biggest in Europe now. So, and I was in the stadium, and I was making my mind up because it was not really, you know, unbelievable offer they made, because I was earning more in my club in Holland than in the Premier League with Spurs.
Sounds like Daniel Levy, that.
Yeah, he's good with that. So I was on my own in the stadium, and maybe you don't know, but I was there probably the first time when I came to England as a player. I scored the winner at White Hart Lane. Yeah. So I had unbelievable memories, you know, at the stadium. But of course, Daniel didn't even know that I scored the winner there with West Bromwich Albion. But for me, it was probably the reason to decide to go there, to come over to Spurs and stay there.
Yeah, but it must have been a shock when obviously coming to Tottenham, and then after 13 games, you know, you're there as assistant manager, and the head coach Jack Santini, who's just off the back of a Euros in France, he leaves so quickly. What was it like for you to kind of take the reins from Jack Santini, and what was going through your head? Well, like after 13 games, you're now the manager, and all the decisions are onto you.
Yeah, for me, it was not a strange thing, you know, because people don't know, but I was already manager of the year in Holland with my club. Yeah. I was not young, but I was still I had 250 games, I guess, in Holland. So for me, it was the right moment to go there. And of course, I played in England as well, and I played in Germany. So I thought, you know, it's an unbelievable thing, maybe to be the first one who was a coach and a player in England, Germany, and Holland, and I'm still that guy, you know. So it was a challenge. So, but when Frank told me, you know, it was probably in September. I already told him that I wanted to leave in January because Chrissy, Clive Allen, and me, you know, there was not a lot to do for us because Jack Santini took his own staff with him as well. So that was a bit strange. So it was probably the same situation as with Juan de Ramos. You know, he was Spanish. He didn't speak a lot of English, and I can remember Jacques, of course, was French, and he used me as a translator as well. But I have to admit that my French was probably not the best language for me. You know, so I did as if I was his translator, but I didn't know what he was saying. What he was saying. You know, so I was translating to the players, and they didn't know what he was saying. So that was good for me. So I could tell them anything I wanted, you know, and then it was probably a strange situation. So, and then Daniel called me in and he said, take it or leave it. And my manager said, okay, we have to take it, because Daniel said there's 4 or 5 other guys at the gate, you know, as if he wanted to say that there is other options for him. So, but I was happy, and my manager said, okay, we take it. And after a couple of months, you know, I sat down with Daniel Levy again, and he gave me a better contract.
Yeah, I want to talk to you, Martin, about some big moments from when you were manager. And the first one I want to talk to you about is Old Trafford 2005. So obviously
We hadn't won at Old Trafford for a very, very long time. Pedro Mendes hits the ball from just behind the halfway line. It goes, quite a way past the goal line, and the ref doesn't give it. The linesman doesn't give it. Everyone saw your interview after the game, but what was going through your mind at that moment where it was so clear for everyone that was a goal, but the goal just wasn't given?
Yeah, the goal that never was. That was unbelievable, because I think it was the 1-0, and it was a shot, I think, just over the halfway line for Pedro, and it went in. And of course, we couldn't see it properly, because it was too far off from us. It was too far away. So but later on television, of course, and in the dressing room, on our laptops, we saw that it was probably, what was it, a yard, 2 yards, that it was a goal. So. But I always like to keep my dignity. So I said, but months later, I still had the problem, because it would have been for me quite an achievement, and maybe for Spurs as well, to beat Man United. And in those times, they had a really good team, because I can remember Ronaldo playing, all these guys. So it would have been quite a result for us.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's from a Spurs fan forum a few years ago. There's a video of you recounting a story of you going to the referee's dressing room after the game. Do you remember what happened then?
Yeah, I can make up a story, but I really don't know, because we were still flabbergasted, and we thought, what did happen here? Because normally, if it is probably 10 centimeters but it was so clear, that it was amazing. So that was the only thing which is still on my mind, that, and I always remember it as people said, the goal that never was. And yeah, that's.
And then in 2006, there's 2 moments I want to talk to you about. First of all, the last North London derby at Highbury. Obviously, there's that very famous picture of you going head-to-head with Arsene Wenger. I heard a rumour as well that you might have that framed in your house. Is that true?
Yes, that is true, yeah. It's in the toilet. It's in the toilet.
That's where Arsenal do belong, that's for sure. But Martin, tell me your recollections of that day. And what did Arsene Wenger actually say to you on the touchline there?
I can remember there was something in midfield, and they collided, the 2 players of Arsenal, and I said, play on. That is what he said, and he was probably right. Because in Holland you always say play. Even when you want to keep possession, they will tell you to play, but play on is something else. And he said that, I said play on, as if I was saying, But I think it was a rule even by then that you could play on, If the referee would have stopped it, he could have stopped it, but he didn't. And what can you do? We scored 1-0 at Highbury, so I think it was even the final game, was the last game. So I thought, it doesn't matter how, but we need a win. And that is what I thought. But then in the end, I think Thierry Henry scored the equalizer, just for the final whistle. So,
yeah.
But what I remember is that there was 2 guys, and I think there were 2 Arsenal guys as well. They collided. So what can I do about it? If they're colliding, it's not my problem. And I said probably play. But I didn't mean, to play on. But it doesn't matter, to be honest. And he came up to me as if it wasn't fair. And the only thing which was on my mind is because even here, if you do that with me in the street and you come up to me, I'm always ready, because that is who I am.
Brilliant. And we all know how that season infamously ended at that game at Upton Park with players going down with suspected food poisoning. We're just wondering if you ever had lasagna for dinner ever since that game?
It was in the fridge yesterday, so I'm not fond of it. I would take spaghetti, not lasagna. But I can remember that it was probably 4:00 in the morning, and there was players feeling ill, and we couldn't play, and we asked West Ham and the FA not to play, and then they said instead of 3:00 we should play 4:00, and in the end it was probably 5:00. But it was so unfortunate, because I can remember we were 4th probably for 5 or 6 months, and that was quite an achievement, because we came when of course we ended up in the top 5, and that was not bad. If you look at the teams, even then you had Chelsea and then Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, and we were above Arsenal, and how good that Arsenal team was. So that was quite good, for us. And then we had to play it at West Ham, and I can still remember Stephen Kelly losing the ball, playing the ball to a West Ham play, and they scored 1-0, and I thought, buddy, there we go. And it was, I think it was, the result was 2-0, and we still had the European football, but not the Champions League, and that Daniel and the board members were always telling me now, we have to be in the top 4, even if it is impossible, we need to be in the top 4. So, and I think they even promised me, Paul Kemsley even promised me a BMW, so that was all going through my mind. And then I ended up with a Bulgari watch, but it was nice, and I can remember that Ledley King was injured. He had a fracture in his foot, and we couldn't play with him, I think, for 7 months. And believe me, Ledley King was probably arguably our best player. So I think we had 65 points in that year, and for us, it was quite good. I can remember when I started in the first year, we had to battle for the 6th or 7th spot with Middlesbrough, and we almost achieved, say, European football. But in the season after that, we ended in the top 5, and the year after we ended in the top 5. But it could have been top 4, and that would have been nice, because I think it was Harry Redknapp with Spurs who finished in the top 4. So I could have done it with my team before that.
Yeah, most definitely. And another game that I really wanted to talk to you about that really sticks out in my memory, because I was there that day when we beat Chelsea 2-1 at White Hart Lane. I could just tell you the passion with the fans that day was unbelievable. The atmosphere in that ground was absolutely insane. And I tell you, Martin, after that game, someone came up to me in the train station at White Hart Lane train station on their knees with tears rolling down their eyes, saying, "I haven't seen us beat Chelsea since I was 5 years old." And that just basically encapsulated the fans that day. What was going through your mind that day, and how much of achievement did it seem on the day?
I think I did 1,300 games, so I mean, what goes through your mind? The only thing I see is that we beat Chelsea, and Chelsea was probably champions in England. They had a top team. I can remember Robin playing there. He's from Holland, as you know. And my guy, I had in Holland was Boularouche. And Boularouche, I think he made his debut for Chelsea. And Robbie Keane did something on the left with him, and he slipped. And then there was a cross, and Aaron Lennon, because I was a big fan of Aaron Lennon. He was young. I can remember watching him when he was at Leeds, and I recommended him to Daniel. I said he was probably 17 years, but I said, and it was £1 million or something. So I said, we have to buy this guy, and I can remember that he came over me after 4 weeks, and he was homesick, and he wanted to go back to his family, that was nice. But Aaron Lennon scored the winner, and I was so happy for him, and of course for us, because it was an unbelievable game, and for me it was important, because always these things sticks in my mind, can I beat Arsenal, can I beat Chelsea? And I can remember going to Fulham, and then the first thing we did was beating Liverpool and Arsenal. And I still thought back on my time at Spurs, because I had 4 or 5 draws, I think we had, but I could never beat them with my team. So that was a frustration, But in the end, I beat them with Fulham, and that was good. But I can remember a couple of games we were leading 2-0, and it was 2-2. But Chelsea stood out, that was an unbelievable good result. I think Mourinho was there, and all the big players, Lampard, all these Drogba, they were all there. And we had a good team, guys. We had up front, I had the choice. That was very complicated, I think Jermaine Defoe, when he wanted to play. Robbie Keane was always knocking on my door when he was not playing. Berbatov was there. I think Mido was there. The biggest problem was Canute, because Canute... a good thing for me was that Canute didn't score for West Ham, so I could always say he's not a goal scorer. And then he went to Seville. Maybe you remember he was African Player of the Year, and he was top scorer in Europe.
He knocked us out of UEFA Cup as well.
Yeah, and he couldn't get a game with us. That tells you that we had very good strikers. But of course the team was probably not as good as they were in maybe in 2011, 2012. They had better players, Van der Vaart and Modric, all these players, and I played with Eric Edmond. I had soldiers like Brownie. Michael Carrick was young. We took him for, I think, was £2 million from West Ham. So it was different times, and we didn't spend all the money. like other clubs, but we still had, and it was like a puzzle, you know, we still had a good team.
You mentioned before that you said you saw Aaron Lennon at Leeds and you brought him up to Daniel Levy, that you wanted, you suggested Spurs sign him. What was it like navigating a transfer window with Daniel Levy? How much of a say did you get in transfers?
No, I think they will never take players, you know, if the coach or manager don't want them, you know. The only thing is, of course, after I left, I think there was a guy called Baldini, but with Harry Redknapp, I think Harry was probably the only guy who was there then. And when I came, they had that constellation, or they had a structure with a sporting director. And Frank left. Maybe you know Frank Arnezen left to Chelsea.
Yes.
And they pay us 5, 6, 7 million quid. And then I was doing it on my own, like an English manager. And that was good, you know, because I think I could get on with Daniel, you know. But it's not like that we bought players for more than, what was it, 5, 6 million? I can remember a transfer window with Pedro Mendes and players who were Eric Edman, you know, 2 million, 3 million, Michael Carrick, 2 million, you know. We didn't spend a lot of money, but maybe Spurs didn't have a lot of money. So I think to finish in the top 5 when I was there was quite good.
I want to ask you, Martin, about 2007, about that infamous game against Getafe. You know, I was at the game that day, and the whole stadium was so upset for you, and you know, everyone screaming your name, and it sent shivers up my spine just seeing you on the touchline there, and nobody caring about the game anymore, just people just focused on you and wanting you to stay at the club. I mean, when did you hear about the news?
I can remember my nephew was there, you know, with me, and he lived with me. A young boy, and he came over to me, you know, after the final whistle, and he said, "You're sacked," you know, in Dutch, you know, "You're fired." So I thought, okay, it was a bit strange, and I think there was a bit going on during the game, and I thought, you know, what is it? There was something, you know, and the people, and maybe you can remember these images when I was sitting there, and I always said I looked like my mom, but of course. I saw my mom crying, and I never cry. You know, I have to admit, you can ask my wife as well. She's here with me. But I can remember there was something. So I must have had a sort of, I must have suspected something, you know. And I can remember even before that, because when I took Berbatov to Fulham, that was nice. I said to Berbatov, you fucked me over when I was, you know, at Newcastle, when he was sulking, you know, because everybody said, you know, that the board said, yeah, why is Berbatov sulking? Because he was on the bench. I kept him on the bench. Maybe I gave him a rest. And then I said, okay, you can make a warm-up. And he was not really making a warm-up. So that was probably the first signal for the board, you know, to tell people that I lost the dressing room. But it was only about results. I think we had 3 or 4. Was not. I think we had 1 or 2 defeats, but I think it was more about the draws we had, you know. So we had a very bad start. But maybe you can remember there was a guy, and he was a young guy, you know, he was 31 or 32, and he wanted to act like a sort of sporting director, and that was not good for me, you know. I can remember in his first game, he came over in the dressing room, he was leaning over to the wall, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, yeah, it's nice, you know, I want to learn something. I said, you can't learn here at halftime. So I kicked him out of the dressing room, and there was Comoli, you know, and of course he would have told Daniel to take another coach. So of course Juan, that was an easy one, because he won the UEFA Cup, I think, with Seville.
Yeah.
And I think in that year we played against Seville, so I met him as well, and you know, he did well. I mean, what can you say? So we had a bad spell, like Mourinho and like Pochettino. Pochettino was at Spurs, you know, they couldn't manage to win an away, I think 1 away game in a year.
Yeah.
And he was still there. So I think I could have done with a bit more patience, you know, but in the end, you know, overall, I had a fantastic time, good connection with the fans. And that it was like sort of like a dream for a coach or manager.
Yeah, I mean, you were completely adored by the fans, and me personally, and I know a lot of Spurs fans, never forgave Daniel Levy for the way he did treat you. And, you know, we all wanted you to stay as manager at the time. That's a fact. And I remember, from a personal note, you walking out the gates at White Hart Lane after a game, and, you know, you always had time for the fans. You always spoke to the fans whenever they came up to you. So I'd just like to thank you for your time at Spurs, and thank you for the way you did kind of connect with the fans, because, you know, not many managers at Tottenham have done that. And I would say you, Harry Redknapp, and Maurizio Pochettino were three of the managers that really kind of got what it meant to be a Spurs manager.
Much appreciated, boys.
Of course. Is there anyone at Tottenham that you were in talks with and you nearly signed and had potential signing and never got over the line?
Yeah, there must have been a few, but I mean,
anyone
I think it's
notable?
Yeah, I had always players in mind, you know, because I can remember, for example, in Germany. I know Germany. I played in Germany. I had family members who were married with German women or men. So we had, for example, Boateng. We had Berbatov, you know, and of course there are a few players which were probably not, you know, was not very realistic to get them over. But of course, I can remember, for example, Darren Bent, and he was for Spurs. He was unbelievable expensive. You know, I think he was 15 million.
Yeah.
And we took him, and I think, and he was, of course, Darren Bent was a goal scorer, but we had players like Robbie Keane and Berbatov, so it was not easy for these guys to get a game. But my biggest probably player was Edgar Davids. And Edgar Davids, he was probably on a free, you know, he was on a free. So I can remember him coming in the dressing room and everybody was quiet and they thought, so the manager did well, you know, to get him over here. And he had a very good season, you know, because he was a warrior. But I can't remember, and you have to be honest, that we couldn't take the big players like, for example, Modric was over 20 million. And when I was there, it was probably unimaginable, you know, to get a player like Modric. So as I said, it was different times when I was there. So we had, for example, players like Pamaro, you know, the right back. He was a Stalteri, you know, all good, honest players, but they were not the players. They, for example, I had a couple of years ago, I saw Spurs. They had Christian Eriksen, you know. I gave him his debut at Ajax. Jan Vertonghen, I converted Jan Vertonghen in the centre back. Toby Alderweireld played for my team when he was 18 or 19. So that is why I like Spurs, you know, and they were probably the best centre-back pair in the country, you know, Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld, because you can remember they never conceded goals. Yeah. So it was so nice. Probably not in the Carling Cup final, you know, that was harsh, you know, when I had to watch that in the same year because it was my team and they won the cup, you know, that was a bit harsh. But later, you know, I was always happy when they won games, when they played well, and they had fantastic teams, you know. The only thing is, I think they should have made this transition a bit earlier, you know, even with Pochettino. And I think that is the reason that we are not in the top 3, top 4. But I reckon, you know, if you look at the players, even with Christian Eriksen, like Sonny on the left and Kane and Dele Alli, you know, as you know, Dele Alli is not a midfield player. He's a 9.5. He always attacks the space. But you need someone who can give that pass. And I think Eriksen was probably the best passer in England. And that is why Spurs was probably undefendable, you know. They were like the old teams, you know, push and run and pass. And that is why Spurs was probably a bit disappointing over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, what do you see in the Tottenham team now compared to the, you know, peak Pochettino, and in terms of the quality of players we have at the moment? What's the big difference you see in why we're not competing for the top 4 at the moment?
Now the difference is that you lost your style. You know, if you look at the weapons we've got, as I said, Harry Kane is probably with Lewandowski the best number 9 in Europe. You had Speed on the left, and he was on the left. He played on the left, Son, and there was not a right wing because Eriksen drifted in. He played in the channels, and that was unbelievable. You know, tactical. I mean, you know my player. He was pound for pound with Berbatov, probably the best player I'd ever had. That was Moussa Dembele. Moussa Dembele was a number 9. I converted him in a controlling midfield player because I thought he's not productive enough. He's unbelievably gifted, but he's not productive enough as a forward player. So I converted him a midfield player. And how did we miss him at Spurs? I mean, he was probably the best midfield player we had over the last 9 or 10 years, arguably. So I thought, if you took him with, for example, Sissoko and then Christian going in, playing that pass, they attacked the space behind midfield, they attacked the space behind the defenses, and that was Spurs, and that is why Pochettino was so unbelievably successful. But the same was probably for me. He never won a prize, and that will always be at Spurs. You have to win something, and I think they were very unfortunate over the last 5-6 seasons not to win anything.
And a player that's currently in the Spurs team right now that you gave your debut to in Gareth Bale. So Gareth Bale, you bought Gareth Bale, you gave him his debut. Did you ever think that he could turn out the way he did when you bought him?
I saw Gareth, when we had our games at Stevenage, every Monday I went to Stevenage to watch the reserves, and then they played against Southampton with Kieran Dyer. He was playing for Southampton. Theo Walcott was playing for Southampton, and Gareth Bale was playing for Southampton. And I can remember him having a number 5, and he was left back, and he had an unbelievable free kick. He was physically good. So that is why I thought, and that was Spurs. That was different because at Man United, because I can remember his mom telling us, he could go to Man United as well. And I said, yeah, but Mom, he will never play there in the first team. And she agreed. And I said, I will play him. And I could say that, because I had no one on the left. Because maybe you can remember Reto Ziegler. He was 17 or 18 and he had to play on the left because he was the only player I had. Later, I had Steve Malbranc, and he was a good player. Yeah. But Gareth Bale, of course, he was a left back. And I saw him and I said to his mom, he will play. And that was the reason that they decided to come to Spurs and not go to Man United. So that was good. And the Saturday after it, I had to play him against Man United because I had to put my money where my mouth is. So I had to play him. And I did play him. And I think he did 12 or 13 kilometers in his first game. He was so fit, but I agree with other people, like with Harry. Harry saw as well, like what I saw. He's not a left back, he's an offensive player with his power, with his speed. And of course, I was always proud to see him, because if you saw what the guy did at Real Madrid, and especially in that time with Spurs, he's amazing. And yeah, hopefully he will stay, because I think he's a Spurs player, and if he can show what he can do, and if you give him a little bit of confidence, because that is important, even when you're 30 or over 30, I think he could do probably the same as he did in his prime.
Oh wow, that's quite a big statement. Yeah, and what were your first amazing moments as Tottenham manager? If you were to say one moment, was there one moment you could pick out where you think that was your favourite moment?
I think the favourite moments were when we were in Europe. I always had the same. I had that with Berbatov all the time, and I can remember playing at Leverkusen, and Leverkusen was a good team. They played in the European Cup final, and we had to go there. And if you look, I think I had 60 or 70 games in Europe with my teams, and I have to say it's pretty good, and even in away games. And if you got players like Berbatov, he always said to me, "Have no fear, Berba is here." And I always used to say that. And I thought, I always said that here, 20 years before that. Have no fear, Jolly is here. But he meant it, and I thought it was only bluff. But for him, it wasn't. And because I can remember a Spurs game, maybe you can remember as well. I came with Fulham to Spurs, and Fulham could not beat Spurs, because Spurs was better than us. And he said to me, "Okay, boss, don't have no fear. I'm here. I will do it." And he scored 1-0, and we beat Spurs at White Hart Lane. And I think they missed out on the Champions League, So I really felt a bit embarrassed, but I was so happy for the team, and it was nice to show the Spurs people that that it was not the first time that I won a game at White Hart Lane, because I did that as a player, and now Berba did that for me, So, and of course Berba was a Spurs player as well, and he played for Fulham, and we came back in the dressing room and we celebrated. I can assure you that. That was
well, thank you very much, Martin, for that. But Yeah, no, like Martin, I just want to say thank you so much for your moments at Spurs. But we don't have a manager at the moment, Martin. Are you thinking about throwing your hat into the ring?
No, I retired a couple of years ago. I had a minor. I was in London actually in Chickwell. I'm the only one who left. Who was left there. Everybody moved to Enfield, and I was still there. I think it was with Danny Rose. I
Yeah.
still got my house in Chickwell. That was probably 1 minute from the train from the lodge.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I was telling people when I was 23. That one day I would like to go to England. Spurs was my favorite team. And can you imagine, to end up as a manager at Spurs, and work for them, it's a dream come true. So, of course, I would do anything, because I can see now that Spurs is probably not struggling, because I think they will still play European football, and I think the top four is impossible now. But I think if you look at the circumstances, I think 6 is okay. You can be too critical, but let's give them a little bit of time, and let's wait who the manager will be, and then you will see with a couple of good signings. I think if Harry Kane stays, because if he's not staying, I mean, you will be in the same situation, and you have to take players who are probably very expensive. Like I saw, for example, Icardi, and Icardi is a good player, but then you have to take Mbappe as well, because that would be a nice player, but that would be probably impossible for us. So if Spurs can hold on to their players, I think they could have a great season next season. But you need 1 or 2 players, who could, like Bale, for example. I think if you take Bale and if you let him play, I think he could do amazing things for the club.
Mm. And you mentioned Spurs don't have a manager now, but who would you like to see as the next Spurs manager? Or if you have few different options of who you'd like to see.
I've heard that they wanted Erik ten Hag, but I think Erik ten Hag, of course, he's from here. He's an Ajax coach. I think in England, you need to settle in. You need probably a little bit of time. I think somebody like Ancelotti, but he's at Everton. I think Brendan Rodgers would, he's quite a manager. If you saw them play again, he plays modern football, attacking football. That is what we want to see at Spurs, and I think we are not far off, because we don't have the passer. If you have players like Dembele or Son, or even Lucas, you need a passer, and we don't have that passer. Although Harry Winks is a real Spurs number 6, I think. And I think that is what I always had. For example, Michael Carrick as my number 6, a passer who is clever as well, and that is what we need. Now we've got Højbjerg, and I think credit to him, he's a good player, but at Spurs you need players like that. For example, Chelsea, they've got Jorginho, and that is probably the players we need. Players who can build up from the back and then play a push, pass, and run game again.
Mm. And what about someone like Graham Potter, who's been strongly linked? Have you seen a lot of Brighton this season? Is there someone who's impressed you?
Yeah, but you can. Of course, Graham is. I think he's playing good football. But Brighton is, 16th in the league now. So it's not like that they are 8th or 7th or 6th, I mean, we were 14th when I came to England, and we ended up 7th and later on 5th. So Brendan Rodgers, for example, is doing very well. Graham Potter is, it's a gamble, So you can gamble, but I think then you leave, you don't want to gamble, So I think you've got managers like Allegri, he won a lot of prizes in Italy, I think he's quite good, but we took the risk with Juan de Ramos, with Santini. It's not easy, Yeah. Pochettino was different, It was not easy for him with the language, but he was such a personality, and he had such a good connection with the players that was different, But if you get a coach who can't communicate with the players, I wouldn't take that gamble, So as a matter of fact, you say Graham Potter. So if you're really brave, you could take a gamble, Because with me it was the same. I was coach of the year in Holland, but nobody knew in England, so that was a gamble for them. And I still appreciate Daniel for giving me the chance. And that is what a coach needs. You need a chance.
Mm. And also there's a manager, Ralf Rangnick, who from your time in Germany you might know quite well. Is he hasn't been managing for the past few years, but is he someone who you think could throw his hat in the ring for Spurs?
No, you have to be realistic, guys. He's not a coach. He's a sporting director. And if you confuse the two things, you need a manager coach. You don't need a sporting director. So if you talk about Nagelsmann, who is a coach, he's probably one of the youngest coaches, maybe the best, maybe one of the best. Certainly, he's unbelievable. But he goes to Bayern Munich, so you are too late. We are too late. But Rangnick is someone who took Nagelsmann, who almost educated Nagelsmann. And of course, they are all from the Red Bull school, from Austria. But I think Rangnick is. I mean, I think it was years ago that he was a coach, but that is a long time ago. So you have to be realistic. Of course, you can take him as a sporting director, but that is totally different.
Yeah, no, of course. And finally, I just want to ask you about Jose Mourinho. Obviously, he just lost his job, but why do you think it didn't work out with Jose at Tottenham?
Yeah, it didn't work out. I mean, that is what they say. It didn't work out at Man United, but to be honest, I think he won the FA Cup, he won the Europa League, so he still won the prizes. So if he would have won a cup last year, I think he would have done the job. It's not easy to come to Spurs. Spurs wasn't doing unbelievably well in the last, year, 1.5 years with Pochettino. So it was not the easiest of jobs, so... Maybe he needed a bit of time as well. It's a matter of choice. You have to make a decision, and I think the Spurs fans are probably very impatient, and that is what they love Pochettino. It's probably the same as with me. If somebody like Juan de Ramos comes and it's not taking off and he's not getting the results, of course. And I think Pochettino was an unbelievable manager, but. Jose Mourinho, you will see it in the future. Of course, he's got his style, and I think the Spurs style is a bit different because he wants to play on the transition all the time, on the break. And I think with Spurs, you can do. Even with Pochettino, you play forechecking on the first press. Sometimes, of course, he had a different strategy, but most of the times he tried to press. But the thing was, the puzzle was probably 100% with Christian, with Dele Alli. You can remember, guys, that Dele Alli was probably 70 or 80 million. Not because he was an unbelievable midfield player. No, he scored goals and he was in the box and he was attacking the spaces all the time. But then again, you need another player who is the engine, like Eriksen, who's giving the passes all the time. So I think they have to look for something like that. I still feel, and I told the people, take Ziyech. Ziyech is not playing like he should play at Chelsea. He's playing like a forward player. He's not a forward player. Ziyech is a player like Eriksen. Play him on the right. He will go into the channel on the inside and he will give the pass all the time. He's one of the best players in the Premier League. But now, if I would be Daniel, I would take him for 20 million. I think they paid 45 for him. So take him. And I think that problem will be solved because he will give that assist and he will pass it to all the guys who attack the space.
Well, go on.
There was one more question I wanted to ask because it was about the European Super League that obviously happened a few weeks ago now, and after that's been disbanded, there's been quite a lot of kind of bad will between the ownership at the moment and the fans. And obviously, as someone who was manager under the current ownership in ENIC and Daniel Levy, I was wondering if you had any opinion on if you can understand why there's a bit of tension at the moment between the fans and the ownership, and what your opinion is on how Daniel Levy kind of runs the club and what your experiences with him are.
Yeah, I think he underestimated the situation. All these guys did, because I think if you look at all the teams, they all apologized. All these board members, all these chairmen, they apologized. And of course, you have to think of your own league. And I think there's not a better league than the Premier League. So if you look at the Champions League, I was there at the game, when we played Ajax, when we went to the final. What do you want, A Super League. If you play against the same teams all the time, it's nice. But can you imagine that Spurs will be bottom of the group all the time? Because that will happen because all the other teams are bigger, spend more money. So you will get a situation that you can't win. And I think now it's winnable for a lot of teams, even Spurs. I will forget the final because that was awful against Liverpool. But overall, it was an unbelievable year in Europe. And I think why would you change that? In Holland, you know, they say it's not only about the big teams, it's about other teams as well. So let's count our blessings, you know. And for me, of course, you can change, because sometimes, you know, change will make progress. But on the other hand, you know, if people are, I mean, you saw all the fans all over the world, even in Holland. So, and I think, you know, Ajax didn't even want to play in that Super Cup. So I think in the end, you know, I think they made the right decision, and you know, and leave it as it is.
All right, Martin, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the channel. I'd love to thank you for giving up your time, for coming on, and, you know, for giving your opinions and your stories to all the Spurs fans out there. So I'd just like to give my thanks and appreciation. It's something that I've wanted to do since literally opening this channel, because you were the first Spurs manager that, you know, the Spurs fan base really fell in love with my time from supporting Spurs. So thank you very much for that, for coming on.
Pleasure, guys. I'm a happy man to be part of that unbelievable club.
Yeah.
Thank you, Martin.
All right, thank you, Martin, and
you, mate.
we'll see.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you next time. Thank you very much, Martin.
Yeah. Okay. See you. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
See you.
And that was the brilliant Martin Jol, people. I mean, I really have been trying to get him on this channel since we've started, and it really is an honor and a pleasure to have someone like that come on this channel. I don't know about you, but like, he is literally, Pochettino aside, let's say, my favourite guy to come out of Spurs since.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think any other manager connected to the fans as much as Martin Jol, and it really has been a pleasure speaking to him and getting the insight of how it was at the club when he was there, and all the big moments and his reactions to that. It was a really joy, and hopefully we can get him on again at some point.
Yeah.
But it was amazing to have him on for a brief time, and hopefully in the future we can have him on again. It was a really joy.
Yeah, it really was. I think every interview that we've done on We Are Tottenham TV so far, that has definitely been my favourite so far.
I think so.
So look, I hope you all enjoyed it out there. Let me know in the comment section below any comments regarding the interview, any reactions to anything that Martin has said during this interview. But thank you everyone for watching. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.